see this guy being carried by his medic and his nurse? That's exactly what it was like when I was taking the drug test.
In 1968, while Bill Blazinski was serving in the Army, he volunteered to be a test subject at Edgewood Arsenal, the Army's research lab outside Washington, D.C.
The Medical Volunteer Company is an essential link in the chain of our national defense.
Between 1956 and 1975, thousands of soldiers took part in top-secret experiments to help the Army develop biological and chemical warfare. Blazinski says he was exposed to CS tear gas 3 times and believes it caused his chronic health problems, including leukemia.
I inhaled a drug, a chemical, and within 5 minutes, I couldn't feel my legs.
And 50 years later, Frank Rochelle says he still has nightmares after testing a potent hallucinogenic so strong he thought the freckles on his arms had become insects.
And I went in the bathroom and tried to cut the bugs out from under my skin.
Frank and Bill speak for roughly 7,000 Cold War-era veterans who, in 2009, filed a class-action lawsuit demanding treatment for health problems they claim were caused by these experiments. Tests to develop weapons the Army said would incapacitate enemy soldiers.
Incapacitated, not really hurt, but temporarily useless in a military operation.
In 2015, the Ninth Circuit Court ruled the Army must treat the so-called Edgewood vets, but the government has refused, saying the court's injunction would, quote, improperly limit their discretion by specifying how the Army will provide medical care.
When did you first begin to notice any effects?
The Army insists the veterans must prove their disability is linked to their time at Edgewood, and they can only be treated at VA facilities.
We don't have time to wait around for the VA to say, okay, you've proved your case 5, 6, 7 years down the road. We don't have time for that.
No one from the Army or Justice Department would talk to Fox News, citing the pending litigation. But former Justice Department lawyer and UC Berkeley law professor John Yoo says the government wants to maintain control over how medical care is provided.
The government's the one that has to, balance costs against benefits and try to find the most effective, least costly way to get the job done.
Even with the litigation going on, it seems like the government's just kicking this down the road.
But Frank and Bill argue the case has languished long enough and hope President Trump will order a meaningful settlement soon.
He can be the hero. He can be the champion.
He made a lot of promises. I'd like to see him keep those promises, and I think it would do good for him to do that.
President Trump recently signed a bill making it easier for some veterans to see their private doctor if they want to bypass the VA system. But the law does not directly impact the Edgewood veterans or their ongoing litigation against the Justice Department and CIA, now in its 8th year. In Oakland, California, Claudia Cowan, Fox News.
For more on this, let's bring in our legal panel. Bob Bianchi, criminal defense attorney and former head county prosecutor and trial attorney, and Rebecca LeGrand, criminal defense attorney as well. Thank you both for joining me here.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
What do you think? Bob, does the government have a leg to stand on here? Are they doing the right thing, or is this just wrong?
They're not doing the right thing. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. It's morally reprehensible that this class of 7,000 people, given the wealth that we have on this day, Memorial Day, these are people who are literally dying by lawsuit because they cannot get the care that they're entitled to get under the Act. And the Ninth Circuit has ordered that these people get the appropriate care, and still it's twisting around and through the legal system. People should stand up and do the right thing, take care of these 7,000 people, irrespective. Listen, these people were human test dummies. They were guinea pigs. It's laughable when you look at these clips that these people could possibly think that injecting these substances, making them inhale these substances, would not have prolonged effects. This is outrageous to me, and I have very good confidence, given what President Trump has done so far, that this will be rectified, because in a momentary action of an executive order, all these lawsuits and all this can just go away.
And here they are still suffering decades later. Rebecca, your thoughts on this? Should the government be stepping up and taking responsibility at this point?
I agree the government needs to step up. A lot of the fighting has been about how involved the court should be in the details of what the government needs to do to take care of these guys, and that does get complicated. There are arguments about not not wanting courts to micromanage how care is provided. But it's obviously important to take care of these veterans who had chemical agents tested on them in really terrifying ways. And I'm hopeful that the more recent decision out of the court in California will allow a way forward that makes sure the government does the right thing without getting courts involved in day-to-day decision-making about how care is provided, which understandably can be complicated and problematic.
And let's add one reality to it, that this is something where now President Trump and the Ninth Circuit can get along on.
Yeah, we will see what happens with that. They are calling on the president to do something, so we'll see if that happens. Shifting gears, we're also learning that a federal judge has dismissed a wrongful death and defamation lawsuit against Hillary Clinton filed by the parents of 2 Benghazi victims. The judge tossing that wrongful death claim out on technical grounds, ruling that the former Secretary of State did not defame the parents when she contradicted their particular version of the events. Rebecca, was this in essence to be expected? Is there any surprise here that the case was thrown out?
No, I think this was to be expected. There were sort of 2 kinds of claims here. One was a wrongful death claim, which is very serious, but the court found that had to be brought against the government, not against Hillary Clinton as an individual. And the plaintiffs didn't meet the right steps to even bring that claim. So the court didn't address that on the merits. And then the other question was defamation. And defamation is a high standard. And the court found that comments by Secretary Clinton saying she didn't remember conversations the same way or disagreed didn't rise to the level of odious statements that are required for a defamation claim. So it's not surprising, but the merits of the more troubling claim, the wrongful death claim, were not reached here. It was thrown out essentially on a technicality.
So there are a lot of people that wanted to see Hillary Clinton held responsible in some way for what happened in Benghazi, for her emails. Bob, is this another step showing that the responsibility won't be found possibly even in the civil courts either?
Well, I think that we need to be careful when we start infusing politics into legal matters. And what tends to happen is that the viewership, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on, want to use the judicial system as a way of being a fan of one side or the other. But I agree with the guest. This was an appropriate decision based on the law. I don't believe it was a technicality. What they indicated was that they cannot show that the intelligence that was on the server causally related to deaths. That's number one. And secondarily, government officials, myself included when I was one, are protected by a doctrine called immunity, where you just can't sue government officials in civil cases because the policy behind that, despite how bad what they did is that we don't want our government officials afraid to make decisions. So the courts balance that interest there. As far as the slander is concerned, it doesn't come anywhere near a slander case. And I actually feel bad for these folks, these 2 women who lost their sons. They're obviously decent people. But as a lawyer, if they had come before me, I would have had to respectfully said, your lawsuit will go nowhere, and in a court of public opinion, maybe it means something, but not in a court of law.
Well, thank you so much for your legal analysis, Bob Bianchi, Rebecca LeGrand. We appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you.